Sadich.
Hi,
Tad
everybody.
Kirk, you know.
Ah, Thad.
Hey, George, George, I have to call you. Let me call you. I need to call you. It's a whole thing, you know.
Yeah. Let's maybe wait a couple minutes. Let's just do some small talk, right? Because there may be some latecomers, and actually, I'm still not sure if any of the other Stickman guys will show up.
It was
If
maybe
they do, it will be a real surprise.
yeah. I think Tony is in the middle of something, but you know, he's bombarded with liquid tension experiment zooms, you know.
I know, and I didn't really want to bother them.
Yeah,
with
but
something.
maybe Pat sent something. Pat answered one of the emails like 20 minutes ago. Probably he will stop.
Yeah,
by.
I knew. I already knew that. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, you know.
Okay, so I guess we can start anyway, right? So, yeah. So today, 10 years ago on this date, I had my first gig with Stickman, and yeah, so 10 years where really the last year sort of didn't happen, so it was only 9 years in a way. But the story, and I mean, if you guys are interested in the whole story, the story started much earlier, and I want to try to tell you as much about it as I remember. Some of it may not be totally accurate. I do want to encourage you. You know, this is not like a prepared talk. I'm just gonna kind of like, you know, tell you about whatever I remember. But I encourage you at any time to ask me questions, please. Yeah, even if we have to jump around chronologically, it's a good thing to do that. I've starting to notice, like after a 10-year period, that one starts to kind of like mix up years, and starting to notice, like after a 10-year period, that and even some people were saying they saw me on the first tour, where I'm pretty sure that they didn't. So it's interesting, and so like I would also obviously like to hear from you about any particular memories you have, or shows that you remember, shows that you went to. That would be great. So really, this whole thing goes back to maybe late '89, when I heard my first King Crimson record. You know, that's how it goes, right? Like I heard the first few notes of Elephant Talk, and I sort of like fell in love with that kind of crazy sound for pop records. There was something starting with a tritone, and then that, you know, that amazingly futuristic but still organic sound that the band had back then. That was like really so fascinating to me, and that brought me to the stick. And I obviously had heard of Tony Levin before, because Peter Gabriel's album So was very, very big in Germany, and probably big everywhere. I don't know for sure, but so still to this day, when I play a show with Tony, I'm kind of like thankful for um, whatever person decided to put a lot of marketing money on the So record, and also the engineers who mixed Tony's bass extremely loud on that record. And yeah, so hearing Crimson, hearing the stick, getting to know those names, you know, Fripp, Bruford, Levin, Adrian Belew, that was a big thing for me. And so a couple months later, I can't really remember, I went to see a Robert Fripp show in a place in a city called Bielefeld in Germany. And it was a League of Crafty Guitarists concert. And there I found sort of like an invitation letter, like a flyer on the tables, which was for Guitar Craft, which was for one of Robert's level one, so introductory course, um, at Schloss Wattensee at Lake Constance, so in the very south of Germany. And actually, the actual castle was in Switzerland. I wasn't aware of that before going there, funnily enough. And so at that guitar craft course, Robert Fripp taught, well, taught is probably not the good word or the right word, but he also showed us exercises that would later show up as a King Crimson piece called Thrack. And I only like noticed later on that I probably, or the people that were on those courses had kind of like known about this piece of music longer than the people that would be in King Crimson then in 93, 94, actually 94 were. And so for some reason, I got like this really strong connection with Crimson. And it really always felt like a family. And my sense of myself as a musician or as an artist with some sort of vision always was that I couldn't really exist in a local scene. First of all, I was extremely shy, and I wouldn't really know how to meet other people. Even though at some point I started like answering or calling some people who had put out flyers in a music store. That's how I then eventually met Bernhard of Zentralzone and stuff. But that was later. That was like in '96. But so in '91, that level one course was very important, and then it took me sort of 7 years that I was studying with Robert Fripp, where in those 7 years I'd probably seen him, I can't remember, 4 times, 5 times, 3 times even, maybe 3 personal meetings with him. But those had really kept me busy for many years. And even after my last meeting with Fripp at a guitar craft course, which was in '98, um, like years later, I was remembering something that Robert had, like an exercise Robert had given me, let's say in '95, and it was 2009, and I was still practicing it. And so it's always been with me, that experience, and like my love for the music, the love for the approach. And yeah, so I mean, like you can already see how that is probably connected to then eventually joining Stickman, right? But um, it was in now, like, I mean, I'm also starting to mix up the years, but in '94, '95, when the six-piece Crimson first came to Germany, I went to a show in Düsseldorf. And then I think on a later tour, which may have been the same year or the year after, I went to a couple concerts. And I remember one in particular at the Tanzbrunnen, um, the dance fountain in Cologne, which was very particular for me because Robert Fripp had a beard. He had a full, like not a full beard, but like I have right now. The beard was the first time I ever seen him like that, and he was only like 4 or 5 meters, so like 3 feet, uh, feet, no, so meters away from me, and and Robert actually recognized me there, which was interesting. Like he said hello, and Tony was there, and like Tony, I made eye contact with Tony, and I really loved Pat the most somehow because I had seen Pat play with Sylvian and Fripp in '93, December '93, I think it was, or late November or something, and Pat was really like, I already felt like my friend, even though I'd never spoken a word with him. Um, so then, and I don't exactly. I have to say I don't remember exactly, but there were a couple more shows maybe I went to in '96 or something. Then the projects came around, and that like '96 I met up and joined up with Bernhard Wöstreinich to play to start this band called Zentralzone, which we still have, and we actually just did a session at the studio for 2 days. And I just came back from that today. But anyway, so Zentralzone was already like a little bit, I have to say, like what the King Crimson projects back then were, which was like free improvisation and trying to use like for the, during that time, modern technology like MIDI and stuff like that, to create this like a music that was combining rock and roll, let's say, of some sort, electric guitar sounds, ambient sounds, and electronic beats. And in a way, like the only project that wasn't really heavy on the electronic beats was Project One, I think. No, yeah, Project One, which I had seen at. I saw 2 nights of Project One at the Jazz Cafe in London. And you see, I always was like, even though I'm, like I said, I was extremely shy person, and I couldn't even like, and it's still difficult for me to make phone calls to people that I don't know, for example. Um, so I always kind of like was proactively, and kind of like fighting my anxieties. And part of that was like even like traveling to London and having to find a place to stay, like a really really shitty hotel that cost like 250 pounds. And as a student, I didn't have much money, but it was worth it for me, like because I was such a fan, and I was so emotionally and spiritually nourished by that music. And obviously, when going to see Project One, I had no idea. I didn't even know that they were going to improvise, right? So it was a fantastic experience. And so I'm noticing that I'm missing a lot of details, because obviously also I started to play the stick in '93, and the stick I bought from Trey Gunn. And I had gotten the contact of Trey Gunn from a friend in Guitarcraft. And Trey had a spare stick available. I called him when he was in Woodstock, New York, recording with David Sylvian and Robert Fripp. It was the recording or rehearsals, I can't remember exactly, for the first day for that album that I then later saw the live show for. Yeah, so Trey was there at the Jazz Cafe, and Trey, Project One, and Trey was playing the 8-string war guitar at that point. And I had just at that time in '96, or maybe it was early '97, gotten the sister instrument that Trey had. It was the same, they were built at the same time, same woods, same piece of wood. And yeah, obviously there was also some sort of connection. But really, other than that initial first phone call and a couple letters that we sent, Trey and I, we hadn't seen each other or talked to each other. So that was Project One. And then actually, like maybe, can't remember, I should have looked this up, but then Project Two also played in London. And I think it also was the Jazz Cafe. And I also was there. And that was, no, even the Project One show, Sid Smith was already there working merch, or I can't remember if he was, I think he was doing merch. But I had known Sid from the Elephant Talk mailing lists, which some of you may remember. And also Sid was at that last Guitarcraft course that I had visited, which now I remember the date. I think it was August '98. And so Sid then also was extremely important and instrumental in making this whole thing happen for me, because he, at the end of that course that I met Sid at, I drove him to the station, to the train station, and he mentioned to me this friend of his called Ian Boddy, who was making music, British guy, north of England, and he mentioned Ian Boddy to me, and somehow like that, it felt like a good thing, and we got in touch via email, and I sent Ian a few guitar loops that I had recorded, and just a few months later, I think I visited him, and we produced an album called Distant Rituals, where also some of the tracks, they were named by Sid Smith, because at the very beginning of the Din label, Sid Smith was involved as sort of like a strategic advisor, or somebody making also writing the press releases, I think. And so you'll see all of this is going to make sense because all of these things come together over time and over. Well, this was in, like I said, in 98, and 99 was the release of Distant Rituals with Ian Body. And in the year 2000, and like my friend Philip, I see my Philip is here, who helped me co-produce my first few solo soundscape releases. I visited Philip in Munich, where he lives, and we were working on my album with the funny title, The Longest in Terms of Being. And I think it was a Sunday night, and King Crimson was playing at Circus Krone, which is like a wooden tent. And the double, that double duo, it was, it was Construction of Light Times, right? Played a show there. And for some reason, I can't remember exactly. I may have had email contact with with Pat, before the show. And so after the show, we waited, Philip and I. Philip, maybe you remember this better, but I think we went to the side of the stage, and there was this barricade kind of thing, and we waited, and eventually Trey showed up, and we said hi. We didn't talk, but we just nodded to each other, and Pat showed up as well, and it was just a really brief meeting, maybe a couple minutes, nothing more than that. So now, like the next day, that was really special and important. I went on a train back to north of Germany, and then as I was walking through the train, I was passing two guys sitting there, and it was actually Trey and Pat. And Trey recognized me, and he said, "Markus, come on in, let's join us here." We had their individual cabin, and then I joined them, and I sat there, and I started talking with Pat, and Pat and I, we didn't stop for like a couple hours to talk to each other, and we actually exchanged some music, which pretty soon after this experience I actually stopped doing, for reasons that I may or may not explain, but I gave Pat a copy of the Ian Body Markus Reuter album, Distant Rituals, and Pat gave me the album 99, which I think must have, been released in 99, which is by Mastika, with the trio that he had with two friends from Austin, Texas. And so that was kind of like the beginning of our friendship or brotherhood, or however you want to call it. And so did you see, like this some things seem to happen like in a short time frame, but then there are others where I'm thinking, oh well, this is insane. So like between that first meeting on the train with Pat, where we became friends, and me first visiting him at home, there were 5 years. So, and the only thing that I remember about those 5 years was that I was sort of Pat's webmaster, and I made his first website. And I still remember what it looked like, but I couldn't tell you much more about it. We tried to have like the tour dates on there, and like it was 2000, so maybe 2003, 2001, the first MP3s kind of like were on the net, and it was interesting. I did that for 5 years before I got that message from Pat writing to me, "Markus, I have heard," and I must have sent him the second, or was it the second? Probably the second record I did with Ian, which is called Pure, which was more composed. And I had sent him a copy of that, and Pat absolutely loved it. He really loved that record, and so he gave me a call, sent me an email saying, "Markus, do you want to come by? I have this Pro Tools set up here at home now that a friend gave me to do online sessions," which back then they already tried doing, and technology wasn't that, or it wasn't fast enough. Internet wasn't fast enough, but there were already attempts to do these online sessions. And And so Pat had invited me on the, you know, on the impression he had from the Pure record. So the interesting and good stuff was that for Pure, I had written about 20 pieces of music, which were basically all sketches. But um, for the album Pure, I can't remember how many we used, maybe half of them or 12 or something like that. So I had quite a bit of material from those writing sessions lying around. And those I think I took them to Pat's place. I don't think I sent them before I went there. So and then in that 1 week, or I think it was only 1 week that I spent at Pat's place in Dripping Springs, which is close to Austin, Texas. We wrote this album called Totem, which back then for some reason actually people, it was after Crimson had stopped in 2003, and people were sort of like very interested in getting more of that material that sort of had like developed for the Power to Believe album, which I really think is one of the best King Crimson albums. Also, like in terms of being current, and well, much of that actually is Pat's and Trey's influence. And but anyway, so people were kind of interested in getting more music from Trey and Pat, and Trey and Pat had started this duo which they called Two, and and like my immediate idea was like let's have a band, or let's have a duo that's called Tuner, because I just thought that was a better name, and had like these wonderful implication that it would also be okay to actually write tunes, which I'm not doing as much, but I should, because I think I'm kind of good at writing melodies. And but anyway, so that became like the outlet for the writing side of things, and did that with Pat. And in around, I must have been 2007 or 2006. No, sorry, yeah, 2006 or 2007. I was at Pat's place, and he pressed play on his Pro Tools, and he played me something that started like this: soup, 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 which is the intro to the track Super Collider. I think, or it's called Soup. I don't even know what the track is. The real track is called Super Collider, and it was that first demo that Tony and Pat worked on for that piece, which wasn't a composition for any band. It was a composition for a Tony solo album, Stick Man. And so I'm going to be totally honest. Even though I like the energy of the music, but somehow like there was like a certain kind of humor, or kind of, yeah, humor, I guess is the right word, which me as a German, I don't get. and so I always like that Stickman album. I don't think I've ever heard the whole album. And then when the first Stickman EP kind of came out, it's so crazy, because I was there at Pat's place when Pat was recording his parts for that. So for some reason I was already kind of there, and I was already in the band somehow, or could have been in the band. But Michael Bernier had gotten the call from Tony, because he lived very close by in Saugerties, I think, New York, which is pretty close to where Tony lives in Kingston, New York. And yeah, so let me think how to continue this story. So Austin, Texas was an important hub for me those years, between maybe 2005 and 2010, actually, or 2011. Because I also took a couple of projects there that I was producing, and one of them was a German artist. Her real name is Simone, and the artist name was Tova. And she asked me to arrange songs for her that she had written and produce those songs. And I basically I asked Pat to sort of like to play his drums, which also meant that he was kind of like co-producing the drums for the record. And also Philip was also there, right? He was in Austin as we were working on that record. And but you were at a conference or something, right? It wasn't.
Yeah,
You
this was actually not related. It was just a pure coincidence. So I was on an HCI conference, and we met. And actually, also we met in Germany when you saw Stickman perform live in Munich. I think you were.
Yeah, but that was later, huh? That
was
was
later. Okay.
That was later, because before I had seen Stickman already in, and this is why I was telling the story. So I was producing the Tova record there, but also an artist from Austin called Krista Bell, which David Lynch had worked with, and David Lynch had kind of like financed demo recordings for her for an album of cover songs. So I already tell you, this album is one of the best things I've ever done. It was never released. I think she gave it away as sort of like in a special kind of box set at some point, but it was never officially released. So anyway, so with Christabel, I went to New York City to mix that album after I had, like chopped everything up and quantized everything, tuned everything. Those were interesting times, because I remember I was based in Austria, Innsbruck, Austria back then, and like the quota I had for data per month was 4 gigabytes, right? So, and I was producing these songs which had like 50 tracks, so I had really used the data transfers, like timed, like even like sent something like on the 31st, right? And then on the 1st, because that was when the quota reset and stuff like that, just to get the data over. And so funnily enough, I just can't remember the name of the mix engineer right now. It's a very, very famous mix engineer who'd worked also on the Soul record, actually. Yeah, maybe it'll come back. But so he was based in New York. Pat had recommended him, said he had like the best ears, and no, it wasn't David Bottrell. I worked with David Bottrell on the Tova record, actually, and that was mixed in Toronto, actually. So we'll figure it out. Maybe someone of you can Google it. Tova Escapologist is the record. And anyway, so I was in New York, and yeah, one of the things I learned there was a little goes a long way, is what I can't remember his name. I'm so sorry about this for now, but and it was during those mixing sessions that Stickman was playing BB King's in Manhattan, and I went there and saw the show, and it was the California Guitar Trio who I'd been friends with. I met them at the very first Guitarcraft course I went to in '91. So you see, like everything kind of like, all these circles closing all the time there. And I can't remember which year this was, 2008, 2009, maybe even. I would say, I can't be sure, but I think it was the first year or even the first few shows that Stickman had played together. And so anyway, what happened was, like, I really wasn't a big fan of Stickman. I think this is an important detail. Back then, I wasn't a big fan, because sort of for me, I would have wanted for Pat and Tony to kind of like go forward with the things that Crimson put into the world. And it's just, I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to be totally open here. So there was a, so let me think. So it was 2010, and maybe in early 2010, or maybe late 2009, I had been like working sort of like semi-professional in music for almost 16 years or something like that. Or let's say maybe I started, 96, I would say. So it was something like 14 years. And I started to think, okay, so how cool would it be if I could actually, and if I would actually tour, right? Because I never had the opportunity to really have the, I never had to learn a tune to play in front of people anymore. You know, I was improvising, mostly an improvising musician. And when I was writing, then I wrote the parts that I could play, and I only played them once for the recording. Like on the tuner albums I did with Pat, like especially Pole and then Face, I played all the instruments. You know, I love playing regular bass, regular guitar, keyboards. I just love that stuff. And we, you know, used a lot of you know, like more bizarre instruments, like I was playing melodica and stuff like that. So, but anyway, so I'd never really seen myself as a performer. But then something happened, and I said to Pat, how, you know, I would like to tour. I said that to him. I still remember saying that, and he said something like, "Be careful what you wish for." That's what he said. And like, not even a year later, in August 2010, he sent me an email. It arrived in the evening, like maybe 6 or something, and he asked me to join Stickman. And yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked. And yeah, I'm still shocked thinking about it, because there's also some other thing I need to tell you. You know, I'm missing so many details here. You know, being a fanboy, I also went to the 40th anniversary tour of Crimson. I actually went to the Keswick Theater, and Thad was there, somebody else, and also to what was then the Nokia Theater in New York City, right, in Manhattan. Nokia, I think it was called Nokia back then. They you know, that theater changed names so many times, and it was the I remember the lineup now, like 5-piece with Gavin Harrison as a second drummer, something like that. Yeah, I think that's where it was. And so as I was already friends with Pat, Pat told me which hotel they stayed in, and I actually booked a room in that hotel because it wasn't expensive at all. And so after one of the sound checks I was at, I walked back to the hotel, right? And there was this tall guy in front of me, bald guy. It was Tony Levin. And I was walking behind him. And he actually turned around because he thought I was following him around. So that was kind of like really the first impression that I must have made on Tony around that time, that I was kind of like a stalker. And then I also went into the lobby at the hotel and stuff. It was awkward. It was really awkward. But anyway, so I got the email from Pat, and sort of like, yeah, of course I was going to say yes, but I slept on it one night. I just gave myself the time to sleep on it, and in the morning, like, it was like totally clear that I was going to do it. And you know, I don't have exact dates, but I think it was maybe 4 weeks later. And you know, I had immediately booked because okay, I remember now, because this tour in South America, which was the first tour, you know, also with the first date, which was 9th of March 2011, had already been booked. And so you know, they needed new material, we needed new material, and they needed to you know, needed to pass the audition, which, you know, so anyway, I went to Pat's place. Tony arrived, and like like from the very first second we were together as the trio, everything was cool and easy and friendly. And Tony and I, we sort of like have a kind of like similar, well, not similar, because Tony actually went to a real music school. I never did, but we're both like come from the classical side of things, and we're probably properly trained and stuff like that. And so the very first music we wrote together is the piece "Crack in the Sky," which we still play to this day. And I think we must have played it at every show we ever played. And so I think our meeting there at Pat's place also wasn't more than 3, 4, maybe 5 days. 5 days at the most. Because there's one thing I learned also only once I started with real professionals, was that unlike what outsiders think, there's never time to rehearse or write. Maybe at the level where there's big money involved, right? Or where there's like some sort of like, yeah, big company involved. But for independent artists, especially those who are dependent on touring, and especially, like Pat and Tony, that's what they do. That's how they make their money. I was still basically just doing this as a hobby at that point, right? And so every day that they couldn't be on the road cost them money. So okay, like we had these 4 or 5 days, and we came up with what is called the Absalom EP. That was recorded during those days, written and recorded during those days. Probably also some back and forth after, like sending files around. And then I mixed that EP with my friend Fabio Trentini, who's also a wonderful musician that I play with in a trio now. I did recorded the Truth record with Fabio last year, 2 years ago. Crazy. Anyway, so that was the first time, that was like a week we got together, like it was decided, okay, I'm in the band. But you guys need to know, we had not played live together. We had jammed together in Pat's downstairs garage. And it was sort of like, the kind of rehearsal where you couldn't really tell, at least I couldn't tell what was going on. Like, were we actually able, I can't remember if I was able to hear them properly, if I was playing in time, and like, this doubt, being doubtful about myself is sort of like, kind of like a mode that is very common for me. And like I said, like my basic state of being is filled with, I'm filled with anxiety. So anyway, so we hadn't really played together. So basically that meant that going to Argentina to play that first tour with them, and it wasn't only Argentina, there was, I will look at the tour dates soon, but there were, we flew into Buenos Aires and we had rehearsals in Buenos Aires. And I think it was 2 days maybe where we could play through the material. And that was like in a local studio by probably some very famous musician in Argentina that I wasn't aware of. At least that's what people always tell you, but you don't really know. and yeah, so then we flew to and I call the place Tucumán, but the name is like San Miguel de Tucumán or something. That was, like I said, 9th of March 2011, and that was the first show I ever played with them. And I still remember that going on that stage for sound check. Obviously, like the sound check is a little bit like a little bit of a performance, right? So even though there may only be like a handful of people in the auditorium, so it was the first time that I actually heard the band through a PA, where it was loud and where I had monitors, like real speakers on stage, right? Which we had for the first, I don't know, maybe 5 years of playing together. And it was, yeah, so it was really like a blow in the face, like that energy, and like the focus that was asked of me, to do my job well enough for. And this is like what I like. I saw my role for the first few years to be good enough so that Pat and Tony could shine, because that was sort of like what sort of was missing for me when I had seen Stickman before that. And I don't blame Michael Bernier for that. I don't know, for whatever reason that wasn't the case for me, but I said, okay, I don't need to be a star here. The people are not coming from me. They're actually not even coming for Pat. They're coming for Tony. That's a matter of fact, right? And so I wanted to be good enough to support them so that they could be, who they are, and they could be the stars. And so the story was like this: that after sound check, Tony kind of like almost, took me to the side, like, went out to the lobby with me and said to me, Marcus, tonight after the show, there's going to be like the signing is going to happen here, and it's going to be crazy. And tomorrow, tell me what you think about this. He said something like that to me. And okay, okay, I had no idea. It was very simple what he was trying to tell me, but you will learn about that later. So anyway, we went out of the theater, and right next to the theater was this small espresso bar. We went into that espresso bar. There was an older lady, older, maybe not as old as Tony back then, but she looked older, definitely. Anyway, it was interesting. She served, I probably had some, like a latte macchiato or something. Tony had an espresso. And it was like, what was shocking to me was those people there, obviously they didn't know who Tony was. So he was just a regular guy. Like there were no vibes of stardom or no vibes of anything. It was just incredible. I tell you that, like, this other the lobby of the theater was just like 3 meters away, right? So it was incredible, just bringing these places, these vibes. Like, okay, there's people who don't know about this, and tonight there's going to be people, like hundreds and hundreds of people who know about this, and that makes all the difference, right? Or know about Tony. And so we played the show, and like, okay, so what about the show? So like I said, at soundcheck, it already felt to me like I was being kind of like energized, but also like it felt a little bit like some sort of um, well, let's say aggressive energy, right? It's and not aggressive in a negative way, but sort of like focused and forward and powerful. But for me, since I had never experienced that before, it was really something um, bizarre, right? Bizarre. Also, like, because I'd never felt these forces on my body and also on my psyche before. And so not really I don't really want to talk much about, like, I probably had like tons of technical problems, and like I had to learn to switch the patches on my pedal board, which was sort of like an improvised thing at that time. I had a controller which was actually an effects pedal, but I only used the effects pedal as a controller for an X effects, which was like a 2 rack space thing, which I had like I learned the hard way that I should never take something as heavy on the road. So it was all a good learning curve there. Robert Fraser was there. Robert Fraser is a great guy. I would say one of my best friends, even though we don't speak much. And and he was really skeptical about me, like super skeptical, like really a hard teacher, guru style teacher. Like everything, anything I did, like it felt like I didn't do it right, and but he wouldn't say what I should do differently, right? It was interesting. It was very good school working with Robert. So playing the show, then I started to realize during the show, and also like maybe reflecting on it at night, I felt that I was actually capable of of kind of like pushing against the energy that Tony and Pat put out, and that came as a real surprise. Like, you know, it wasn't a devastating experience to be in that energy, but it was more like, okay, I was playing my part, and it felt as if I was contributing to the energy, and as if I was also able to um, sort of like even hold them back a little bit, which is probably because I was speeding up, right? So being nervous and yeah, and you know that's like one of the um, happens quite often that musicians are rushing when playing live on stage or even when recording, and when you're not using like in-ear like a click or something, um, rushing is like a common thing, and I certainly was very guilty of doing that. And sometimes when I, because I'm also working on like releasing these old bootlegs, sometimes there are shows where like I don't know what's going on with me, and I'm like the tempo. But anyway, so that first show felt actually really good. Felt like, okay, this could work. And obviously only with that experience of the first show I could like realize and understand this position that I mentioned before, where I was going to be supportive, right? That was like my whole thing for quite a few years. Okay, so now back to after show, right? We went out to that lobby, like Tony said something like, okay, it's signing time, let's go out, give some autographs. And it was quite big lobby, and there were maybe, I would say, 400 people there, and everybody wanted an autograph. And for me, it was like people wanted an autograph for me, and I didn't see why. You know, it was my first show, first time anybody had seen me play internationally uh, at a proper rock show. And but you know, the worst thing was, and you need to know, this is like the worst thing that can happen when you go to signing, if you don't have a Sharpie. And I did not have a Sharpie. Okay. So like you can imagine what that was like for me that first night of signing. I think eventually like people have like ball pen stuff that they kind of like give you, and then you start scribbling on the CDs. And I was actually responsible for making that Absalom EP. And I remember that first edition was actually made in the US, and I had forgotten, or we had forgotten to specify that it shouldn't be clear coded. So the material, it was like, even with a Sharpie, it was impossible to sign on it without it getting smeared and stuff. And you know, funnily enough, there's a track called Smudge on the Absalom EP. But that was those CDs looked like once we signed them. Uh, and anyway, so it was kind of like a wonderful experience. It was sort of like an introduction to the world of this, like what it means if you as an artist create something that means something to other people, or that means like more than just something to people. And it was just a really yeah, really fantastic experience, and like my introduction to being on the road. And speaking of that, okay, so like the events, they go like this here when you're on tour, right? So next morning, we only met our driver for the tour after the Tucumán concert. So he picked us up in the morning at the hotel, and I still remember that the hotel was at something that looked like a motorway. So it was like already, like, I can't remember, maybe 3 lanes or 4 lanes even. There weren't many cars, but it was a pretty big street. And so we, we put our stuff in the back of the van. The driver closed the back of the van. Everybody got in the van. Also our kind of like tour manager, good friend Max, was there, wonderful guy. And so Richard, which his real name is Ricardo, but Okay, he wanted to be called Richard. Started driving. It didn't take 5 minutes before the back doors of the van went open, and all of our gear landed on that motorway. Everything, including my touch guitar and Tony's stick. So that was my very first van ride with Stickman. Isn't that amazing? So we stopped. Unfortunately, there weren't that many cars. My instrument, there was nothing wrong with my instrument, was perfectly fine. Tony's instrument had like maybe once the highest string was broken, snapped. Everything else was okay. We were so lucky. At the beginning of the tour, we could have lost the complete tour. Like if my instrument or Tony's instrument had broken, we could have played the tour. Which is another issue that like people like on the outside are not aware of. Like we're like living so, it's like a huge risk. Like one suitcase doesn't come with you and you have your pedal board or just even like one part of the pedal board, just that one cable in that suitcase, and you can't find, because you're in Argentina and they have different plugs, like it can't like, so I had to learn all of these things over the years. But anyway, like we got so lucky. And let me just have a quick look at the list here. So we played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shows in Argentina. And then we played in Montevideo, Uruguay, and then 2 shows in Brazil on that tour. So that was only 11 days in South America. And that was my very first international like rock tour. And I think I could go on for another 45 minutes, but maybe if there's anything anybody else wants to say or ask, that would be great. So I don't want to read all the chat things. So maybe if you just want to speak up, that would be fantastic.
Hey, Marcus, good. I appreciate you doing this kind of chat with everybody here today. It's fantastic. I think I was at that Crimson show at the Keswick when you were, and I remember Tony introducing me to Mike Portnoy and some other people, but I have no recollection of you, so I apologize. Yeah.
Oh, he didn't know me then.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd seen Tony. He had done a one-off show with California Guitar Trio, and he was telling me before the show, I'm going to write an album of just stick music. And he was really, really excited about it. I'm thinking to myself, oh no, an album of just stick music. Well, what could this possibly be? And then that Stick Man album came out later. And I'd seen that first tour with Michael playing. And then I guess it was that next year that I met you at some little tiny place in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Which was the beginning of some U.S. tour. I guess that was, you had done the South America tour and then you were doing a U.S. tour.
But the first concert in Asbury Park was in 2012. So it was
it was a couple
April
years later.
April 24, 2012.
Yeah, I was there. Right.
Great.
Right. And Tim Mozart was there at that show.
Yes, and George, right?
George was probably there.
Was there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that was also like the first show of the tour where we started playing material from the Deep record that we had just started to write then. So I remember that we probably played Cusp, and not sure, but I have recordings of most shows actually, so I could go back and kind of find out. But I remember that being a very, very special experience there. And I remember that like throughout the years, like the audience at Asbury Park got smaller and smaller, but 2012, it was still packed. It was very nice. I like that place.
I remember meeting you going, how did you get involved with these guys? That was that.
That was the Saint.
Right.
The Saint, yes.
Right.
The
Yes,
Saint,
Leo,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes. But Thad, I remember you remember seeing you for the first time at the Sellersville show, which was probably the year after.
Yeah, that was when we brought the TV crew and did that TV
Yeah,
show with you guys.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
I remember my show, first show. I did have to look it up, but I remember it was from 2011. It was the Two of a Perfect Trio at the Belly Up in Solana Beach, which is a really nice club in the San Diego area, and that was really good because at that time too, I too was been a time Crimson fan, and I've liked Tony's music since I think he did the World Diary album in the mid '90s. So it was really good because I think Crimson at that time was on hold, or it didn't look like there was going to be any more touring. So it was a great show. And I had previously seen Adrian Belews' Power Trio in Orange County. And so that was really a great show. And I remember you being part of that. But it was one of those where I didn't get a chance to afterwards talk to everybody because my kids were much younger. So I had to get home at that time. To their mom, who was watching them as well too. So, but I really enjoyed that show, and from that point, I got into Stickmen a lot, and I've been really happy to see that, especially for me, it's like exciting to hear the Crimson songs, obviously, but I think as time has gone on, to be able to see the compositions that all of you have done and put on the album since then, and that's really exciting because I always love to, I'm excited about new music as well too, and so that's something that I've been. I think then I followed it up with a couple of others. Just I remember being in San Diego in some heavy metal club in 2017 where you guys came on at like maybe almost midnight or something like that too. But that was but I try to go to the shows where I can, and that's I think just especially getting into your music, in the past couple of years has just opened up a whole, and then Moon June Records, which is awesome, has opened up a whole bunch of new music to me. So it's really a great, I'm just glad that I just came upon Stickmen that way. So really good.
You see, like you raised something very important there, that in that first year, it wasn't only Stickman, but what happened was like the birth of what then would be later coined the Crimson Project, which as you said, the Two of a Perfect Trio was that first tour we did. And I think it was, can't remember now, but it was over 40 shows, as far as I remember. And it was like going around, like driving around the US like 1.5 times, something like that. And can't remember now, 17,000 miles or something like that.
Wow.
But it was I think it was like fortunate and maybe unfortunate at the same time, because it sort of it opened many doors. But I mean, I know, I don't know, I don't want to say it as a fact, or like nobody's here to correct me, but I think that the reason that I was there, that I was part of Stickman, kind of like made this idea even possible, that they wanted to go and play those Crimson songs, because Pat and Tony had told me before that Adrian suggested to Robert Fripp to tour the 30th anniversary of the Discipline album in 2011, so 10 years ago, right? So that was sort of like the original thinking, and then Robert said, no, I'm retired. And then Adrian and Tony started talking, and then because they knew that I had learned stuff from Robert, and that I could kind of I don't feel like I could fill those shoes, but at least I could play those parts. So, and as you may know, like that first tour when you were there was still very like structured. Like there was one set of Adrian's band, one set of Stickman music, and then one set of Crimson tunes at the end, which was like the two trios together. And yeah, so basically that year, I joined two bands. Not knowing that I would join two bands, right, in a way. And it was, I think that band, the six-piece, we played, I think, more than 115 shows or so together over the years, which seems a lot, like, to me, like with that kind of material. And then, I mean, like, maybe don't need to go into a lot of detail here, but then, as you know, like in 2014, when the new King Crimson was announced, obviously Pat and Tony, they couldn't, because they were in the new band, they couldn't continue with the Crimson Project. And also, in a way, the Crimson Project was, I thought the music felt correct to me, like what I was thinking was okay, Crimson music, you know, it had that certain danger about it, and it was like, you know, with, like I said, like with that sort of band on that sort of level, you don't have time to rehearse really, even though there was like the very first camp that Pat, Tony, and Adrian did, and they played a few times in the barn, I guess, but I wasn't there. I couldn't be there. I can't remember why right now, but yeah, but that was also like the first show that we played with that Two of a Perfect Trio band was in Atlanta, and I had flown in that same day, and they had already played maybe 2 or 3 shows as a 5-piece, and I joined them at Atlanta. I arrived in the morning, 12 in the morning or something, sound check at 4, played my very first show with them in the evening. Not a single rehearsal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, but that's sort of what's required of professionals these days. You know, if there's, I wasn't aware of that. Like, you know, like the more professional you are, let's say, the less time you have, or the less, well, it's not true, but like I say, like, you know, in this world where there's not a lot of money, it is, you just don't invest that time unless you're living in the same place, right? But then that's sort of like unlikely to find 3 guys who have the, you know, who have the same aim, right? It's difficult, as you know, like, you know, locally how difficult it is to find people to make music with, or even just people who listen to the same music, right? Just imagine, like, if you want to find people who want to play the same music, it's, and like I said, like at the very beginning of my long talk here, I said when I was in Bielefeld, and I was not believing that I could ever work locally, because I knew that there are not enough people in one place that would even enjoy my music. Like in Bielefeld, like maybe 3 people would have, maybe still only 3 people there enjoy my music. So why would you try to make a career there? So that's why. Also, like with the experience of Guitarcraft, which was like people from all over the planet coming together, and you could tell, okay, people come together to do this together, and you can't do that just like in the US or in South America, or no, people came from South America to Switzerland for that level 1 course, right? And then later on, like there were some other courses like close to Berlin that I went to and stuff. So, but like, so I was kind of like being primed already also, okay, what I'm doing here is not special in the sense that it's sort of like an elitist thing. That wasn't the case. It was more like, okay, it's like this niche of interest that only it's really small. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, like more questions before I continue.
Markus.
Yeah.
During the touring, during that extensive period of touring, are there any particular inflection points that you remember, like times where you realized that everything had just changed, even if it was not a huge change, but so like an example that I have is the last couple of Sickmen concerts that I've been to. Your playing and everyone else's playing was notably stronger than just even the tour previous, and it was a big jump. So are there any others that like that you remember or that stick out for you in particular?
Yeah, I think it's a very complex network of kind of like reasons and developments that kind of lead to this kind of thing. I think first of all, just in terms of the gear we had available, Robert Fraser had bought a digital desk that allowed him to kind of like store the mixes, and especially like the monitor mixes. So we had have this little controller where we can make our own mixes. And at that point, we were also starting not to use loudspeakers on stage anymore. So no amps. And so that means like a much more controlled sound on stage so that we were able to hear each other better, right? And like those first 3-4 years, maybe, or 3 years, I think it was, or maybe 4, with like this bad stage sound and loud stage sound, sort of was really bad for my ears as well. Just imagine like guys like Pat and Tony being, you know, on the road all their lives and, you know, with these loud stage sounds, and they really have kind of fucked up hearing, right? This is sort of a given. It couldn't be otherwise, and it's unfortunately it's true. So like improving on the monitoring situation started to have a big influence. Also, with Crimson being active again, especially Tony was challenged to be a better player. As simple as that. So he had more opportunity to fuck up, right? So which means you get better, and and that's sort of what was happening. Like for me, I think as a player, I was probably always good technically, but it was just the you know, it's just the process of maturing on my end that gave that. And also at some point where, you know, I started to realize, okay, I'm not just that supporting guy anymore, but we are sort of like people that are equal, right? You know, this something that you know, was really emotionally taxing on me the first few years, was that, and I'm not exaggerating here, this is, and it's I was feeling horrible sometimes because we were on stage. I think, let's say I was on, you know, stage left here, Pat in the middle, Tony there, and from the very beginning of the show, all the heads were turned this way to Tony, like this. And I'm not joking, it was like that. Like Tony is such a figure, he's such an amazing person, and he has this aura, and everybody loves him, and everybody should love him. I do too. But it was kind of like, sometimes it was really not a good feeling for me. Pat didn't care, right? You know, and Pat like also kind of like draws people in as the show continues. But I was just like, my stage presence wasn't cutting it, right? And I don't think it. I don't know. Like you need to tell me, but I still don't feel like I'm making like a good show on stage. I just play, right? But anyway, so it was like this.
But
this
when you
process.
play open and level 5, then you are showing off you.
Yes, but that was just a few years later, right? And that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like
Then
when my status in the band had already changed, and when people knew about me, right? And this is like something that I have, and it's normal. Like when people don't know you, they are skeptical. So just like what Robert Fraser's attitude to me was for years, right? Like the audience had that attitude. Yeah, they, you know, like, oh, that's the new guy. And even like for the first few years in interviews, you know, Pat and Tony were still talking about Michael Bernier. Like even like I was only playing with them for 3 years, so I'd already played twice as long with them than Michael had, but it was still that his name always came up. And I know, don't have a problem with his name coming up, but you could tell that just the way that people work, or that the minds work, is like yeah, the first guy is the guy somehow. And it was really not easy because of that, just to find my way into that, into the yeah, into the hearts, let's say, of the audience, right? But then for example, on that tour with Two of a Perfect Trio, Thomas Blomster, who I've since worked with many times, who orchestrated my piece Tod Morden 513 for his orchestra, Colorado Chamber Orchestra, and that was performed in 2013. He kind of like saw something in me right away, also on that tour. Like he said something like, you know, Marcus Zen-like appearance or something like that, because like I said, I may appear Zen-like, but inside of me there's a lot of anxiety. But anyway, so somehow like it worked like with some people I resonated and they recognized what I was capable of doing. I say, even though I had already had a career as an ambient musician, I had already had a career as a music producer. Like people kind of like didn't just didn't know of me or not about me, right? And so that was like a I think just getting more and more accepted by the audience then just made things possible. And that's when Tony is there. Hey Tony, good to see you. and you see like that's when things started to gel. I think that's when sort of like emotionally things were starting to be equal among us, and like the audience was kind of like seeing the whole band, and also like going back to what Jerry was saying, like obviously like we love and we still love writing our own music, but there's also always the expectation, let's say, to I don't think that we really care much about the expectation, but then like having the repertoire of Crimson music and not to use it in a show was also kind of like would be a strange thing to do. So, and since maybe at the beginning with the Absalom album, we tried to the track Absalom, we tried to do something that maybe sounded a little bit like a Crimson tune, but then I think we gave up on that. Said, okay, like if we want to play a Crimson tune, we play a Crimson tune, and we write our own style of music, and we kind of, build upon like our experience and our history as composers. And that's sort of what happened. And I'm shocked about things like the piece Hide the Trees, or like I said before, Crack in the Sky, that we played it so many times. With Hide the Trees, for example, okay, yeah, there's this simple idea, let's take a rhythm in 3 and a rhythm in 7 and combine them, and that became this riff. And I still remember sitting at my with the kitchen table in Innsbruck, like writing that part, with very specific ideas, where I'm saying, okay, Tony can play like the 4th interval with one finger, right? He doesn't have to, I didn't want him to have to learn much, so the idea was, okay, just let's keep this very simple, but turn it into something that is sort of like cool, sounds cool, and has this sort of like an intellectual feature about it. And so, and having played this piece like, I don't know, 150 times or more, I get more, much more probably, is sort of fascinating to me. And there you can see like the audience doesn't really expect anything of Stickman other than to be entertained or surprised, or the surprise is the entertainment, maybe, I don't know. And maybe they don't even expect to understand everything. I don't know, could be, like the audiences haven't gotten much smaller over the years. I wouldn't attribute any decline in audience members to the fact that our music hasn't gotten better. I think our music has gotten better and the playing has gotten better. So there are other factors there, right?
Yeah, if I may offer my perspective on this, Markus, I mean, you said you perceived that your role on stage sort of changed, and what I perceive from as a sort of a, let's say, a close observer, is that I mean, the music obviously also did change, and you just gave some examples on the composing process, and obviously there was music in the band before you joined, and I think also your role in the composition process and your musical contribution and your, let's say, your musical profile within this band became more apparent to the audience, I guess, and so that sort of falls in line with also maybe that your presence on stage then is perceived in a different way. And I can share, I mean, I have seen some of your early shows in Germany, and it was really incredible. Everyone was so focused at Tony, Tony the legend. Of course, you are Tony, but it's funny to see that this may lead to ignoring another fully capable musician completely at the same time. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I have to contribute to that, what Philip is saying. I think we were on the same concert in Munich in 2012, and of course, it's Tony who draws the people. Yeah, and I can recall that this gig, really, most of the people were looking to Tony. I have to admit, I always look at Pat because he's the fun maker. And I saw you first time in Cologne 2005 at Tuner, which was, I have to say, this time you had a completely different appearance. You looked like a computer geek or data scientist, that kind of stuff. Yeah? And Pat was working with cans, Red Bull cans and that kind of stuff, and you pushed that through your computer. It was fascinating. Maybe 12 people there. So, and I think accepting the fact that you always need to have a star in the very beginning, I think you created your followers, your following, and you have. I do not recognize you as being a part of Stickman. You're Markus Reuter from Centrosoon to what crazy stuff you're currently doing with great ideas that Leonardo provides. Yeah.
There's this funny thing that happens on posters that the promoters make, right? So sometimes they say like Tony Levin Stickman, which Tony says like we shouldn't be built like that. I also understand why people want to build the band like that, but then sometimes you have like Tony Levin and then in brackets like Peter Gabriel, King Crimson, and then it is Pat Mastelotto, Mr. Ecstasy, King Crimson, and then it says Markus Reuter and nothing in brackets. And I always say, okay, I don't need no introduction, right? They do. And so, which is sort of like a bad joke, but like, like coming back to this idea that the compositions and like what Philip said, the compositions, like I had my contribution and obviously it's great, but you never know what the audience actually, how they project or who they attribute the compositions to also. This is something that I don't know for sure, but just saying like with 80s Crimson, there's a lot of Adrian Belew in those pieces, right? And there's like it's a real group, it's a group effort. You could take one element out, right? And it's not the same thing. So that's why also it's very important that I think all the people in a band should be credited and also should sort of like, if you're writing together, should get an equal share of the publishing, which is also something that in Stickman we do. Like, so there's like a piece like Whale Watch, for example, that Tony wrote. I did some embellishments in the recording process, yes, but the composition is Tony's, but still we share the writing credits. And that it's like such a complex kind of setup to be in a band, and I'm really grateful that I am in a position where things were always handled fairly, and more than fairly actually, where Stickman also has always been paying for my visa, my US visa. Like obviously it's also like Stickman money is also like a third is mine, right? But still Pat and Tony wouldn't have to do that, but it's always like this level of support, which is sort of like really, really wonderful.
I just want to say real quick that, I'm a little newer to Stickman because I first saw you in 2016, that fateful night that the van got broken into, unfortunately. But, I went in with no preconceived notions about Stickman. I knew the members with the exception of you at the time, Markus. And, but at the same time coming in, I was like, well, this is somebody who Pat and Tony have deemed worthy of playing with, right? So there, in my mind, there was no sense of who is this guy. It was like it was more, hey, who is this guy? This could be interesting. And I think as you spoke to, like, Tony has a little more motion on stage. He's a little more dynamic with how he holds the stick at various times and things. But I think that's just so it may be eye catching, but I think it's just a style difference, and I don't think. At the shows I've been to, I find myself focused on different people at different times. Certainly, I mean, I think my experiences with Stickman have really brought drumming to a forefront in my mind that it never was there, because being able to watch Pat so closely at those shows has really just like opened my eyes to the whole world of percussion in a way that it wasn't before. But at the same time, again, like watching you, you're standing there, you're not moving around as much, but watching the methodology and the seriousness at which you're approaching it, I think is, you know, that's your style, that's your thing, and I think it's just as great to be able to watch that happen and see the music being made as anything else. So
thank
yeah,
you.
I don't know what to say, but but you know, thanks to you and thanks to Pat and Tony for bringing you along, because it really, again, I think as was alluded to before, it's a whole, some of the music you're making and the other acts you're associated with has opened a whole new rabbit hole of music for everybody as well. So.
You know, watching Pat play has been incredible for me as well. And, you know, when I'm on stage with him, he's usually behind me. So when we did the Two of a Perfect Trio tour, and there were a couple pieces where they were, you know, Adrian, Pat, and Tony were playing as trio. That was only on that first tour. They did a couple trio pieces, maybe Three of a Perfect Pair or something. I can't remember exactly. It was Three of a Perfect Pair. And I was backstage watching Pat. And as you say, it's like, it's not drums, right? It's percussion. And it was just fascinating to see how he was kind of like arranging in real time the music, where it was more than just hitting the drums. It was like all these details, like, and the way that he also interacts, like, you know, when he leans forward and does something with his hands, you know, on the drum kit, like, it's beautiful. It even gives me goosebumps. And just reminds me of like the very first time I was in the studio with Pat in 2005, and he recorded drums, but it was just a tom-tom he played. And he hit that tom-tom just once, like, boom. And it was unbelievable. Like I was thinking, like, how is it possible that like this really kind of, let me just say it that way, like dumb instrument, right? It's just a skin on a drum, right? And you hit it, and like there's a way to hit it that actually gives you goosebumps rather than just something that's loud and annoying, right? And that's sort of what I absolutely love about Pat. It's like and that's why even back then I started calling Pat a musician, not a drummer, because like normally that joke is like, you who hangs around with musicians, right? And so that was I hear you, and yeah, it couldn't be a better band to be in. And like I said, the fact that Tony has all that history playing live, there's always an audience, like even if it's small, but there's always an audience, even in the remotest parts of Italy or Sardinia, right? Like on a football field in Sardinia, right? There's an audience. It's incredible. And you know, so I need to plug in my computer. Just give me a second. And maybe Tony, you say something.
Hi. Let me say it's good to see so many familiar faces and liked faces. Great to see you. I only somehow I missed the announcement about this, so I only just came in as soon as I read an email from Markus, and I do have to go before 5 o'clock. I have a writing lesson online, but so good to see you all, and interesting to hear these things about Stickman. I never, most of those I never think of. It never crossed my mind at all.
Yeah, Tony, I gave them the whole story of how this happened. Like I gave them like 20 years of a backstory before we actually met for the first time. Yes.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
But I know one thing I heard you talking about is how people look and what the audience thinks about the performers on stage. I not only never think about that, but I kind of stopped listening a little bit. I don't even, something in me doesn't even want to know. I don't ever want to be on stage and think about what it is I'm doing or how I look or something like that. And I'm lucky I don't have to. The music fills up my awareness, and I'm aware very much of how the other guys in Stickman look, and having performed with Peter Gabriel and Robert Fripp, slightly different ways. I'm aware of how people look, but I think I could be wrong, but I think that almost all of us are not putting on a show as such. We're playing the music by all of us. I mean, the serious musicians playing difficult and challenging music. We're just doing that, and we appear how we appear. I could be wrong. It could be that some guys are trying to project a little bit, but I think most of us aren't. I've talked enough. This is great learning experience. I'm going to go back to listening.
Yes. Okay, anybody else wants to?
Yeah, I think I first saw you guys Bearsville Theater, either at or around sometime shortly after the first camp. And I was familiar with Soup. And I remember bringing some friends out to, always followed Crimson and projects and whatnot. And I was fully expecting to see Michael Bernier. And I went there and saw you, and I was hooked immediately. And I've been, following Stickmen ever since. Every album you guys had, snatched up. But it was an amazing, life-changing experience because, I always follow musicians more than bands for the most part. And to see Tony and Pat connect with you was like, wow. And, I just remember walking out of that theater thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want to research everything this guy's done. So,
you know that there's one thing I need to mention. Pat plays more than just that one instrument. He plays the samples. He has like all these capabilities of filling in other sounds, and I'm so happy and grateful that just my way of also like just doing these in a way rather simple ambient backdrops for some pieces kind of found its way into the music, because I think it's sort of how shall I say this? You could say, like, from a mixing perspective, like the more elements you have, the harder it is. But I've found that with especially obviously having Robert Fraser and then having the in-ear monitors, it became more and more of a thing that we could do and feel really good about. I remember at the beginning when we had like stage monitoring and Pat was hitting like one of these dive bomb pads that he sometimes uses like in level 5, or actually in the delicate piece, which is Crack in the Sky. And that was a problem back then. So like over the years, like the technology also opened up to use more of these amazing like parts could be recorded live and kind of like fill in elements. Like we don't have a keyboard player. Like Tony doesn't always have to play a chord and a bass, and also like vice versa. And it was it's just like an ideal situation. Like each player has like a unique voice, and they don't overlap at all. Like I think I would have a hard time playing something that would mask Tony's bass parts on the stick. It's really just like by the setup is already so perfect that anything goes, and it can be really like also be like dissonant in the low end, which is interesting, which you hardly ever get the chance to do. And since the audience doesn't really know what to expect usually, it's been sort of a real privilege just on that level to be able to make this music that I don't think would have seen the light of day at all without this opportunity, of like the three of us together. It's really wonderful. Like this piece, Swimming in Tea, which I had kept that idea, that piece, in my back pocket for, let me think, it was written in 1990 something, so it was in my back pocket for a long time, 27 years, something like that, right? It's and then like to have the opportunity to realize, okay, so all we have to do is to play this piece much slower than it was originally intended, and there we go, and we have this beautiful mood, and like you see, like it's just like whole notes, like the Tony plays whole notes, and then there's just this soundscape which is floating, which is just 3 notes that I play into the looper, and it's, yeah, I have to say, it's like this opportunity, and there are like some like really dissonant clashes of that soundscape with the bass notes and the melody in that piece, and like where else could I have had these opportunities, you know, to do something like this? It's been wonderful, and it is wonderful. Anything else? More questions? Has Pat joined? I think I just saw Pat showing up somewhere.
I saw an email from him that he had an interview.
Ah, yeah.
Unmute. Am I there?
Oh, he is here.
Son,
Wrong
Markus
again.
son.
Hi,
He
Pat.
had an interview.
Hey, Pat. So you missed 20 years of backstory before you actually sent that email to me asking me to join Stickman.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I tune in later and put it on fast forward and just
Yes,
know,
You can.
I'm recording this. Yeah. So.
take all the commercials out? You know, whatever they call that. I forget. I never had one of those things people used to have for their TVs to record shows and take all the commercials out.
Yeah.
So it's good. Well, happy 10 years. It looks like a
thank
big
you.
guitar. Looks like a big guitar pick behind you on the wall, Markus.
It's an African mask.
It's hard to get scale.
Yeah, I know.
It looks small here. I thought a little guitar pick.
Yeah.
Nice t-shirts, Pat.
Oh, thank you. I just did the Italian interview. I thought, there you go.
Okay.
I'm all mirror image. It confuses me. There it is.
Gentle Giant.
Yeah, baby.
Wonderful. Yeah, so you see, you have all 3 of us here now. So now is your chance to ask your questions if you have any.
So we just got through the praising Pat part for all the things he does besides playing drums here. You missed it, Pat.
I'll just have to pay more attention. See, how do I get more of you guys on the screen? Hello, Soren. Hey, Soren, did you mix Mask of Confidence? No.
No, I never mixed anything.
Oh,
that's another guy.
Unfortunately, I didn't have the other guy's name when I was just talking. I couldn't think of who he was.
Yeah.
It's Stefano.
Stefano, but I don't know his last name anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I do if I go look for the email, but
yeah.
God, I'm getting long hair. I hadn't seen myself on camera. I don't look. There's no mirrors in our house, you know. So we forget what we look like until we see them.
Yeah, actually, the hair salons.
You look like a rock star. We should do some tours. Like, you know, you look very good for playing live. You know.
Yeah, for an old man. Yeah. Hey, Ricardo.
Okay, so has anybody any questions or?
Hello, Chuck. Flipping suit. Hey,
Yeah,
there's a hacksaw.
Maybe I can. Yeah. Maybe I can say a few things about Stickman. Yeah. Stickman is you know, I think only Robert Frazza saw Stickman more than me. Like I was just seeing all dates on Markus' site. I was at 140 dates, which that means like 157, 158 shows, and it became my favorite band in the world. Like, you know, and traveling with them all around the world is a kind of it's kind of a unity. Like it's a wonderful you know, wonderful band, and I'm seeing this kind of progress of especially Markus, like, you know, from sort of semi-shy guy to the guy who was just exploding, especially at the end of the show. That's why I told him, look, you have to do kind of shred album like that we did Truth, like, you know, and but that's you know, and I came to Stickman Live around 214 when Tony asked me. Actually, I was helping Stickman with some gigs because the agent of major agency wasn't doing so much, and then Tony always asked me, since we did that tour in 2008 and 2010 with also Terry Bozzio and Pat Mastelotto to do something, and finally in 2014 we started working together, and you know, and I started.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah?
Hey, Leo, can I ask you a question?
Tell me,
Leo.
Tell me, yeah.
Hey, were you at the Eddie Jobson show? I thought you were there for our very first.
Of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was everywhere. And then it became my favorite band because not the only amazing musicians, they're also great people. And of course, Robert Fratz is not here, and it's simply great, you know. And the band kind of every album is literally better and better, and then every album is amazing, but somehow every album is better and better, you know. And the next one will be even better, and the one after that will be even better, you know. Just kind of a rocket ship, you know. It's amazing music. It's very, you know, it's just wonderful experience for me. Very unique.
What can you guys tell us that's in the works now?
We have, of course, we have around 60 to 65 gigs that didn't happen. And the first thing that we have to do is to go back to Japan with Gary Husby, because, you know, the famous tour that didn't happen in China. And then, but we have a cruise to the edge that's in 2022. We still don't know exactly when we are going to Japan, maybe in February. And then before the cruise, which is in April, we will do some USA gigs. Of course, depends. We cannot do so much because apparently King Crimson will be very busy, but we'll do some gigs. And then, you know, then we have to go back to, you know, in Europe, there is also a tour this year, but most likely will happen, but nobody knows, you know. Dates are there like for 3.5 weeks, but who knows? Hopefully it will happen. You know, we live in a very uncertain time of humanity, and we just hope that things will be back soon. And the rest, you know, we will see. But there will be a lot of shows next year, and in 2023, and hopefully new albums and new live albums and new box sets and new T-shirts. I'm ready to sell a lot of stuff for you guys.
I vote yes.
Yeah. But tell us something. Tell us something funny. We miss you.
Me?
Yeah,
I got no jokes. No, I got no jokes. That's sorry. That's why I usually hang around with funny people, because I don't.
I know, but tell us something. Tell us something. Kind of some anecdote about Markus, like, you know, because it was about Markus, and, you know, tell us something about, you know, something that you remember from.
Yeah, I want an embarrassing Markus story.
Embarrassing, yeah.
I'm not going to do that, but I can think of one. In this, you wouldn't know where I am because there's a fake backdrop. I don't know. I got a green screen going, but I'm in my control room, which used to be our bedroom, and studio being next door. And after we'd finished recording, quite often, was I married when we started, Markus? I hadn't married Deb yet. We married in 2010. So while we were doing tuner and stuff, we'd sit on the bed together here and watch TV. And I remember when we watched a movie, it was the Coen brothers. It's a pretty dark movie where he's got the air gun. Anybody remember which movie I mean?
No Country for Old Men?
Yes, yes. And Markus, in fact, I think Fabio was here. You were both here. We were all on the bed in this room watching a TV. And that came on, and it was pretty scary. You know, they just offed those people. They killed those people out, kind of. And Markus, is this Texas? And I said, no, this isn't Texas. No. That's out in Arizona. That's not in Texas. And about a second later, the scene changed, and there was a street sign pointing to Austin. So I said, well, you know, anyway.
I can't remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It's a disturbing movie.
I was in quite denial. No, nothing like that around here. Nothing at all. And you say, but the sign says Austin.
Well, I remember watching that horrible movie with you, the Saw. You remember that?
Well, that
we
was
that together.
Well, I left. That was my daughter, if I'm remembering right. She wanted to watch it, and I guess I said yes if we could supervise or whatever. But I don't think I could hang for a whole episode of that.
It was unbelievable.
But you probably did. I mean, Markus used to go with me every day to pick up Noe from school, and those, well, not every day, but quite often. You know, he was having the parental experience of having a teenage daughter.
I think it was about a week that you were on the road, and I was picking her up from school every day and taking her there. And
okay.
Yeah.
I probably went out with the guitar trio. I'm trying to think who I might have been to tour with, but yeah. That was our old joke because we had the Motu, the Motorola phone. Hello, Moto.
Yes.
Markus, you said some before I came on. You did a history. I don't know if my memory is correct or if you already said this, but am I right that in South America on one of your first gigs with the band, your instrument fell out of the back of the van in the street?
Yes, I
You
told that story. Yeah.
That's a good welcome to the road.
Yeah, that was the morning after the first show.
And the Tucumán show.
Yes, it was Richard. Richard didn't close the doors were open.
And actually, you probably already said all this, but the van was so small and crowded, the drive was so long, I think we drew straws, right? And it ended up that Fraza and I, did we fly and you guys drove?
Yes.
That's what I think happened.
Markus, it's Matt. Is that the instrument that I now own? The U8?
Yes, it is.
All right.
It is. Still one of my favorite instruments.
It bounces.
Still in great shape.
It's so good it can bounce.
Yeah.
It's literally been road tested.
Yes.
Invest in a good road case, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Hey, you want some of Pat's? He's selling his road cases. King Crimson.
You're on another subject.
Sorry to say this to everybody, but I have to go. It's been great seeing you all.
Adios. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Let's do it again in 10 more years, Markus.
Yes, we will. Bye.
Oh, yeah. Just think what Tesla could be worth then.
Pat, do you have any more stories or anything you want to tell, like the worst Stickman show, or like the smallest stage or something like that, or the ugliest backstage area, or?
Well, I have to give it some thought. The grubbiest backstage. I think the grubbiest backstage is in America. I think it's Detroit. That Magic Bag. Mm-hmm. That's a standout. And that's something all you guys in America can go experience for yourself. Although I think they cleaned it up.
They did.
But also in Northampton at the Iron Horse, which is kind of nice club, but in the basement where is the backstage is kind of more than funky.
Yeah, it's
the worst is Reggie's. The downstairs at Reggie's in Chicago.
Oh yeah.
With that,
and even the stage at Reggie's, because these guys aren't on stage, you wouldn't know this. It used to be a slaughterhouse or something. So in the middle of the stage, it all slightly goes down from every angle, and there's like a manhole cover.
A sewer drain.
A sewer drain. It's pretty funky, dude. That's what my drum set on top of.
It never smells bad on stage. From the drain, anyways.
Who would know? Bosh.
I would.
No, that one of the Iron Horse, that's a tough one, but it's not the toughest. The toughest stage I can remember was actually not with Stickman. It was the one we did with Hope Lima in Santa Cruz. And
oh man, that's
it was like, yeah, it's like a star-shaped stage, some kind of weird angles, all triangulated. And so Terry was priority. We got Terry on stage and Alan, and then Tony took the crevices that were left, and I set up backwards sideways to where the audience was right here, and I would apologize and move so that they could see Terry or Alan, depending on who was soloing. And that was the night when, in the middle of something, Tony screamed because he was scared, because we were in a quiet passage of improvisation, and Bozio, his drum set has like 8 bass drums or however many he put on stage that night, but they're not next to him. Some of them are satellites. So there's a bass drum 10 feet away. So you're not expecting this boom to, Tony was standing there and boom, on the other side of the room. It actually made him shout.
I remember that. Wow, that was something else.
Did you tour that with us? I can't. You must have. Absolutely. Yeah, you booked it. That's right.
Of course, but I didn't do the whole show. Like I started in I was in Auckland for 3 nights. I was in Santa Cruz, and then what else? Like a couple of more. I didn't come to the first show in Seattle and Portland, and
yeah,
then we had that was such an experience.
Even I saw that band. I saw that band in Switzerland.
Yeah, at Nick's place.
I supposed to fly to Europe, but for last 6 shows, but unfortunately because of volcano in Iceland, I couldn't go. Like, because if I go, I wasn't sure if I can come back. I have to go somewhere else. And I remember Pat was texting me an email. He said, like, how I can go back to USA? Maybe there is a way to fly via Morocco, like going south and going to USA, like anything but flying like on the top of like Iceland. It was
yeah,
funny.
I changed my flights. I went through Portugal and to Florida.
Yeah, I remember
home.
you even were considering going through Casablanca, like. Oh man.
Okay, so everybody, my mouth is very dry, and you know what that means. So if there's anything, any burning questions or anything you want to say, do it now. It's been a pleasure. I talked for like almost 90 minutes nonstop, and it's just like this whole experience, this opportunity to play with Pat and Tony and like with the whole team, and meeting Leonardo Pavkovic, who's changed my life considerably for the better, and I hope that's going to continue. Like, all of this is fantastic. I've met so many amazing people, and that includes all of you. I think most of you who are here tonight. It's a real drag that we can tour, even if it's just not necessarily for the music, but also just for the sense of community, meeting people after the show. And like I said, one of the most life-changing experiences actually is when I talk to you guys, and you get to experience me not even like just as the player on stage, but as a person who is actually not so serious when you talk to me, right? So it's been really important to have that contact, and I think it's fantastic that Tony has this, and Pat also, like, it's just part of it, right? You meet and you sign, and you're making these contacts. And again, as somebody who has not been in that world, you don't really know how that is. And I'm grateful that
it's a lot different now, Marcus, than it used to be. If you think about it, 20 years ago when Tony and I were growing up, 40, 50 years ago, growing up playing music, no Facebook, no backstage schmooze, it was real isolation, That's just in the last 10 years, especially because of Tony's, as casual and communicative as we are after shows, that's comfortable in a Stickman gig. We can't do that in a King Crimson gig. The numbers are too big and the boss wouldn't like it.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah, but I think that, that part of the whole thing is so important to me. And that's also why I'm actually doing these meetings. Because I think there's like a little bit of a chance to kind of like stay connected, like where we would meet at shows, right? And we just don't do that anymore. And it's like it's a year. It's crazy. Like 1 year of 10 years. Like, think of that. Right? It's a 10th out of the time.
Yeah.
And with the band, it's so that's a lot, right? And also,
yeah, but think a lot of bands don't even last a couple 5 years.
That's true. That's true.
And it was very intense, look at how many albums we did, like, especially those live albums and studio albums, and it's more to come.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we are more connected than ever.
So I'm just curious, Marcus and Pat. I mean,
hey, Fripsha.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat. So I'm just curious, taking this to the present a little more, or maybe even into the future. Is there anything that you guys are working on, or already exchanging materials, or having some ideas or something? Just is there anything that we can expect at some time in the future?
Pat has been asking us for years to send him stuff. And so Pat, I think, would be the first guy to kind of respond to.
Oh, well, then the answer is no.
Okay.
The answer is yes, in the sense that I have a lot of ideas, because you asked about ideas.
Yeah.
And just like, finding the time to sit down and do it is so hard these days. And I mean, like my situation with the baby, that kind of like makes it much harder. I used to be like a total loner. So even though I was in a relationship all the time, I had like at least 10 days out of the month that I was alone, that I was at my place, where I could kind of like nerd out 24/7. Right, and that's sort of what I need in order to gather the creativity or the energy to bring the ideas out into the world. And so now with the baby, with COVID, with the situation, with like the daycares only just opened yesterday here. No, today. So it's really I hope that things will start changing again, and that I'll at least have a couple hours in the morning where I can do some work. No.
Also, Tony, like I spent 4 days with Tony last week, and we finished this book because it was a very big job. And then he also said now it's the time to focus on Stickman, and
yes.
And then I think it's just kind of, I think the spring will bring some
yes.
kind of news about new album that we'll see.
Yes, and obviously we also need to kind of, as you know, like we now need to be creative with the way that we present these things, right? So we sometime like maybe September last year, we had a conversation, Pat, Tony and I, and we were saying, okay, if we do an album, why don't we turn that into some sort of show, right? So have like a Zoom meeting every Sunday, let's say, for an hour, where we sort of present the process. And where we make that as something that people need to pay for, right? Like, because we need to find a way to finance. Like I said, we anything we do for Stickman, may that be like rehearsals or writing, that's stuff we're not getting paid for. So any other job that comes in, I have to take it, for example, right? Like, and so in the last like 10 months, I was teaching a lot because that was like the only income source that was sort of reliable. Then that has dried up in the last 6 weeks, like considerably. And so while that is a good thing, and I see that I may have some more time to actually write music, and I would love to do that. But then I see like all the money, because I have kind of like saved not most of the money, but some money from the Stickman tours of the last 10 years. And so that's why I'm not super stressed, right? But it means like all my savings are getting eaten up, and I should actually be stressed a little bit. I'm not really, but
no, set.
Yeah. So like, so you see, that's sort of like one of the big challenges these days, and yeah. So maybe there's going to be like the Stickman weekly show. Let's see. That we had that idea last year, and then as Leonardo has said, like there was a lot going on for both Tony and me, and Pat is always busy anyway. Like if he's not busy making music, he's kind of tearing down the telephone pole in front of his house.
You heard about that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've already done 2 rough mixes this morning, and I got to be ready for my next session. It's coming over in about an hour.
Yeah, wonderful.
I'm going to recut Ballroom Blitz for somebody.
Oh,
wow.
He heard I play with Mike Chapman. It's not the exact cover, but he said, I needed that groove and nobody knew what I was talking about, and I thought of you. I'm about to go rehead the kit,
Yeah. I need to restring my guitar.
There you go. Is your baby nearby? Can we see her?
No, it's too late. She's in bed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go. I got other people downstairs, so.
Okay.
Bye.
So, bye.
Happy birthday.
See you, Pat.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
see you, Pat.
Bye, you all. Bye, George. He's on the screen
Cheers.
now. Ciao,
Later,
Jim.
Pat.
Bye. Bye. Hey, dude. Bye. Artie, Jerry. There you go. Okay, dude. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Leave.
Marcus,
Okay.
thanks for hosting this. It's been fantastic. It was a good chat. Sorry you had to talk for almost 2 hours.
No, it's okay. I mean, like I said, I really enjoy being in touch with you guys. It's really missing. It's missing in my life. It's missing in everybody's life. But as I said, as a musician, that's like, you know, when we're touring, you should know, like, we're traveling as a small group, and so we see like each other for 7 weeks, right? But we only see like, it's only like 4 people in the van, or sometimes maybe 5. Right? And it's absolutely necessary to connect with new people. And new means like, okay, like I'm seeing somebody in Manhattan tonight, and then I see Thad in Asbury Park and George, and then I see Lloyd in Boston, and you know, Giovanni at the Iron Horse, and you know, like I could list all these places and the faces, like and yeah. It's yeah, but it has been a wonderful time with you, and a wonderful time with Stickman, and I really do hope that we get to make new music. We have some new ideas, like, you know, so far the writing has been it's sort of in layers, right? So like maybe Tony wrote this layer, I wrote that layer. So now the idea is to write in chunks. So there will one chunk by me, one chunk by Tony, and so we want to change things up that way. So, and that all, I have to admit, has also held me back a little bit, because it's hard for me to write something that I don't really know the context of yet. And usually when I have ideas for tunes, they are more formed already. So there's probably more than one section. And so yeah, let's see. But I will promise you all that I'll make an attempt to start very soon, because it's up to me. Like I need to send, you know, throw the first stone. That's what I need to do. And yeah. Good to see you. Bye bye. And I have like an event on Saturday as well, which will be about the Fractal Guitar album that I co-produced and mixed. And that's kind of like a really wonderful album. Fractal Guitar 2, because there's already a Fractal Guitar 1 out there. And yeah, I hope to see some of you again on Saturday. And I've said this before, but I'm also doing this series of workshops now. And so far I've only offered one, which was improvisation. And we did 3 Saturdays together, 2 hours, and 2 hours each. And it turns out that course will continue with a handful of people, because there's kind of like more to look at than just what we had time for. And so if you have any particular idea or any question or anything for either like one of these meetings or for a workshop, feel free to always, you know, just send me an email and let's discuss, and let's see if there's something that could interest more than just one person. So thank you very much, and thanks also for your donations. Great that you do that. And
thank you, and congratulations on 10 years. We look forward to more.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Marcus. Take care.
Thanks, Marcus.
Take care.
Congratulations, Marcus.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.